Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry, and today I am joined by the incomparable Dr. Joe Vitale. He is the author of over 80 books. He is the creator of Hypnotic Writing and the president of the marketing and consulting firm Hypnotic Marketing Incorporated. His books and articles are widely read around the globe. His professional clients include the Red Cross, PBS, Hermann Children's Hospital, and numerous other small and large international businesses. He is also widely known for being featured in the runaway hit movie The Secret. Dr. Joe has been called the Buddha of the internet for his rare combination of spirituality and marketing acumen. Welcome to Next Level Healing, Dr. Joe.
Are you kidding? I've been waiting for this moment. Now my life is complete. It finally arrived.
Everybody, thanks for joining us today. We are complete.
Yeah, that's it. Over and out.
So the reason this came about was because, like you, I had that same journey of hearing about this crazy doctor that healed a whole ward of the criminally insane without ever meeting these people. And I actually learned about it from my friend who used to run the whole psychiatric hospital in Austin, Texas. And for years and years and years, like you, I didn't know who this person really was. So one of my clients turned me on and said, oh, well, that's Dr. Hulen. And so I go and looked up your book.
Right.
And this was amazing. And I've applied this tool so many times, and I can't believe how simple and elegant it is. Can you take us on a journey behind your discovery of this book and meeting this amazing human and applying these tools in your life?
You know, when I showed up for this interview, I didn't know where you were going to go with this. And to go with Zero Limits and Dr. Hulen is like the most magical, inspiring, powerful place to begin. So I'm grateful, and let's do this.
Thank you.
So yeah, I did hear about a strange, eccentric therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals at the state hospital in Hawaii. And I couldn't believe it. I believe in magic and miracles. So Dr. Hulen was the eccentric therapist. He worked at the mental hospital for the criminally insane in Hawaii. And when I heard the story that he helped heal that ward without doing traditional therapy with them and usually not even working directly with them, I dismissed it. I thought, nah, it can't be true. That's an urban legend. Sounds like a great story, Aesop's fables, but it's not true. But I kept hearing the story, and I thought, well, if it is true, I need to know about it. Because if he's doing something that works, maybe it'll work for me, maybe it'll work for other people. So I began a quest to find him. And as you probably know, back then there was nothing on him. I didn't even know his name at that point. I just had this mysterious story. But I started doing some research. I even hired a private investigator. We found Dr. Hulen, and I called him up. And he didn't know me at all, but he spent 45 minutes on the phone answering all of my questions about his journey. And he said it was true. He did work for the mental hospital for the criminally insane. He didn't traditionally work with the patients. He might see them occasionally, but his deal was he was going to do his own thing. And he did. And his own thing was some peculiar Hawaiian healing method called Ho'oponopono. Well, when I first heard it, it was just all mumbles to me. It was all gibberish. And it's like, what? And he said his job on Earth and his job at the mental institution was to clear. It didn't make any sense. Clear what? He said, I'm just here to clean the windows. I mean, I didn't know what he was talking about. He was kind enough to invite me to go to a seminar, and he was in Calabasas, California. And I went to that seminar, and there were like 12 people in the room, which tells you how unknown he and the Ho'oponopono and everything he was doing was out there in the world. Nobody knew about it. There was nothing online. It was just kind of whispered and considered crazy in many respects. I went there. I met him. I found him to be a lovable, eccentric grandfather, kind of a mystic. We connected. I did not understand what he was doing. I did not understand Ho'oponopono. But in the very simplest application of it, it's the 4 phrases that I just said a minute ago, and you've been saying in your brain, and that is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And I experimented with it right then and there that weekend. I remember going to my room, and I had a urinary tract infection, and it was hurting and bothering me and distracting me. And I thought, all right, let me try this nonsense. this poetry, this prayer, whatever you want to call this mumbo jumbo. And I started saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I didn't know the phrases. I had to write them down. I had to look at my little yellow sticky. What's that phrase again? Oh, yeah, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I kept saying it, went to sleep. When I woke up, I was healed. And I thought, what's going on here? And the long story short is I ended up spending a lot of time with Dr. Hulen. I was living in Texas at the time. He came to Texas. I went to California. We did 3 events together, Zero Limits 1, 2, and 3. And he agreed that I was the one. He said, Divinity said you are the one to write the book. And I wrote Zero Limits, which I think came out in 2006, somewhere in there. The irony behind all of this is that's about when the movie The Secret came out, about the law of attraction. And I was in the movie and people were asking me, Larry King wanted me on the show, Oprah was doing shows, everybody was wanting me. And the irony was I was so past the law of attraction. I was now into Ho'oponopono, and I was finding it to be far more powerful and more therapeutic and more spiritual and more healing. And so when people wanted me to talk about the law of attraction, it's like asking me to talk about kindergarten or first grade when I'm in college. Like, that's old news, folks. So anyway, that's a long story. That's the short story version. It's the most simple yet remarkable healing modality. And really the essence of what I've said, people can take it right now and start using it. If there's something going on in your life, and it could be a relationship problem, a finance problem, interpersonal problem, anything you would name, you can use Ho'oponopono. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to help clean up your perceptions, which is what's actually causing the problem.
So beautiful. Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. And your book did such a great job. I had known of the Ho'oponopono prayer for a long time. I use it in my work all the time because it's just, again, the energy of those phrases. But to find your book and your experience with Dr. Hulen was just spectacular. And I started applying it to other weird things in my life that you'd think, like my right hip had been bothering me for like a few months. And I'm thinking, goodness, what's up with this? I mean, I'm an acupuncturist. I should be able to solve these things rather easily. And I just started doing the Ho'oponopono prayer. And to my complete shock, in no time at all, it was just gone.
Right.
And I did it on a relationship. It was just like this, constant thing that I had been running up against with a family member, did the Ho'oponopono prayer, and it just like vanished. The stress, the antagonization.
Conflict, everything, yeah.
Gone. So for our listeners, who may not have caught it the first time around, Dr. Hulen cured a whole ward of the criminally insane without ever meeting these people by using these amazing phrases. Can you tell us about what it was like to put the book out and have it touch so many lives? I'm sure you must have heard a whole slew of stories of people going, I can't even believe this.
Right. I can tell you some stories because Zero Limits came out in 2006 or so. I've written 3 books since about it. At Zero, I wrote 10 years after Zero Limits, and that was after I'd been practicing for 10 years, hearing from people for 10 years, hearing all the questions, hearing the stories, hearing the miracles, hearing frustrations, and also spending time with Dr. Hulen during that time. And even after that, I wrote another book called The Fifth Phrase, which was introducing the 5th phrase to the 4 that we've been talking about. Oh. And then most recently, I just came out with Zero Limits Living, which puts it all together here. So I could talk about a lot of this, but here's what I want to make sure that I get clear and I get across, because you mentioned he helped heal that entire ward of mentally ill criminals. And I want you to know that how he did it is very important because it's relevant to how we heal ourselves and any number of issues that we might bring up. What he was doing was healing himself as he looked at the patients or he looked at the records of the patients. Now, why this is important is traditionally what the therapist would do was they'd see their patient, they would treat their patient. That wasn't working. And it hadn't worked. Those patients were shackled or sedated on a daily basis. They were considered criminals. They were considered dangerous, and they were considered unexpected. You never knew what was going to happen with these people, which is why all the previous therapists and doctors were quitting. The state hospital needed funding. They needed to have a licensed therapist there. They went fishing. They found Dr. Hulen. Dr. Hulen said, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it my way, not your way. And they said, whatever, we just need you here. So when he goes there, he does see people as he's going through the hall, for example. He does see their records. And this is what he told me firsthand. As he's looking at their records, or he would spot them as he walked through a corridor or so forth, he's noting how he feels inside. Sometimes he's angry. Sometimes he's repulsed. Sometimes he's confused. Sometimes he's shamed. Sometimes he's terrified. And whatever those feelings are, that's what he's using Ho'oponopono on. He's not using Ho'oponopono on the patients. He's using Ho'oponopono on himself and the triggers in him as he sees these patients. Now, this is really important because this is how Ho'oponopono works for anything any of us are going to name. So when Dr. Hulen is going inside himself, he's saying, okay, I don't know what's going on in me that's making me upset, making me angry. I don't know how I'm related to this patient person in any way, shape, or form. But, and he would always call it the divine. We can call it God or the universe or the cosmos, but he would call it the divine. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. And basically, to kind of stretch out those four phrases and explain them for a moment, he's saying, I'm sorry for whatever is in my mind or my heritage or my DNA that contributed to the creation of this person or this situation. Please forgive me, my ancestors, any of the beliefs, any of the mindsets I or anybody in the past have had that contributed to this. Thank you for cleaning it up, repairing it, healing it, cleaning it. And I love you for the process, for the healing, for my life, and any number of other things that you would say. So when we say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, it's kind of a shorthand prayer for a longer intent. The longer intent is you're not trying to heal the patient. You're trying to heal yourself. The remarkable,
Does it help to have an understanding of quantum physics? Because if there's no such thing as time and space, as Einstein said, then there's no separation between any of us. So the quickest, easiest way to do healing is on ourselves, isn't it?
I would say it is, but I would also say you do not need to know quantum physics or any of the stuff that is out there as a kind of a trendy thing to look at this point. Dr. Hulen would be looking at the idea that everything on the outside is actually an illusion. It is a projection. Our mind is a movie projector, and we are projecting out into the world our own unconscious beliefs. However we end up describing that, whether it's with scientific terms or metaphysical terms or wild guesses, or we just take it on faith, the idea is we are contributing to whatever it is we're complaining about. And that complaint is actually one of perception. Somebody else might be looking at the very same situation that you're in, and they don't think it's a problem at all. You do, because you judged it as such. So Ho'oponopono, the word itself means to make right. What are we making right? Our perceptions of what we think is wrong. So that may go into quantum physics. I find most of that incomprehensible. And in fact, I've heard some of the scientists say, if you think you understand quantum mechanics and quantum physics, then you don't. Because it's outside of the scope of our mental process for the most part. So for me, I'm a simple guy, but I do want results. I'm very much of a results-oriented person. And if Dr. Hulen told me he just mumbled, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, it made him be kind of in a meditative state, but it didn't change anything, I'd be far less interested. But because it helped with him, it's helped with me, and at this point, 20 years into doing this, I would say it's helped with every single person and every single health complaint, relationship complaint, financial complaint, any fill-in-the-blank complaint that somebody might bring up. This is an incredible tool, and whatever people have gotten so far, that's enough to run down the street with and get results.
What percentage of your toolbox, because you are incredibly successful, both spiritually and in the real world of business, would you say is the Ho'oponopono prayer?
I do Ho'oponopono all day long, every single day.
Wow.
At this point, it is more an unconscious program. I used to say it's the digital tape or the audio tape in my brain, but we don't use tapes. So it's not even digital, but it is the voice. It's the background voice. As I'm talking to you, in the background is, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Sometimes it's more intentional. For example, when we started talking, and I told you just before we started that the allergies may kick in. And then for a moment they did, and we turbocharged and kind of just pressed down on it. It's like, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And for the most part, get out of my way, I'm talking now.
And the underlying truth of that is that everything is okay, and it's just our perceptions that might be off. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. It is we who judge everything as being either right for us or wrong for us, but not everybody would agree on those judgments, which is suggesting that it's an internal one. And if you are judging something is not good for you, you might want to reassess it. And what I find is that when we do the reassessing, we do Ho'oponopono inside of ourselves, and we get to a place of peace, the outer reflects it. The outer makes a change. Maybe the people that supposedly were bothering you move on. And at any rate, they don't bother you anymore because you took care of the issue, the trigger, which was in you to begin with.
Beautiful. You've probably been asked this question before, but if you went back and talked to little Dr. Joe when he was 10 years old, what would you say to him?
Oh, I've been asked variations of that. In the contents of Ho'oponopono, though, and my work with Dr. Hulen, if I can take that knowledge back, I'm really looking at that in a sincere, in the moment reflection. It would be something along the lines of, Joe, you are loved just the way you are. You are enough. You are good enough. You are divine enough. You are holy enough. You are loved enough. You are whole and complete the way you are. I think that's what I would say to me. And as I think of that, it's like, I think everybody needed to hear that when they were 10 years old.
Yeah.
Something of that sort, because we don't.
Couldn't agree more. So where you are here now, having written over 80 books, I mean, you've done incredibly well with both spirituality and the real world, which is a wonderful accomplishment. What's next for you in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I'm not done in any way, shape, or form. First of all, I've written over 90 books.
No way.
And the book that just came out, Zero Limits Living, I'm told is 93.
Wow.
Meanwhile, I have ideas for 15 more books. Also, besides the movie The Secret, I'm in about 30 other movies. A couple of them just went on Amazon Prime, so people can watch those. And I have my own movie in production. We're doing another filming tomorrow. It'll probably be out later this year, early 2025. It's called Zero Limits. It's the movie I've wanted for over 10 years, maybe even longer. It's in production now. Also, recently, I'm in my 70s. I had a 70 birthday. And I was invited to be the president of the Napoleon Hill Institute.
Wow.
Which was this amazing, out of the blue, where do these things come from? And I said, yes. So I'm now steering that ship and keeping the legacy of Napoleon Hill going on. And then it was this year, I received the U.S. President Lifetime Achievement Award, which I'm still processing because the Los Angeles Tribune, which had given me the Lifetime Achievement Award, nominated me for the U.S. President Lifetime Achievement Award. So I got projects, I got goals, I've got books, I've got a whole inventory and a wealth of things that are still out there that I'm still promoting and still cooking. Got my own Miracles coaching program. I've been doing coaching for 20 some years. So that's still important, Miracles coaching, and I'm probably forgetting things and more.
So if you're talking to an auditorium of young people that are, say, graduating high school, what are the most important things that you would want them to know to be prepared moving into life?
Oh, that's such a good question. You're good. These are really good questions. I would say, first of all, admit your dream to yourself. Admit your dream to yourself. I think a lot of people have secret desires and secret dreams and secret missions, but they don't even admit it to themselves because they don't think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think it'll happen for them. It happened for Dr. Joe and it happened for everybody else, but it's not going to happen for me. I would say the first thing is admit your dream to yourself. The second thing is start taking action in the direction of manifesting it. I have found that a big secret to success is just persistence, just getting up every day. I was homeless. I was in poverty for 10 years, but throughout it all, I was writing. My first book wasn't until 1984, which is like 20 years of trying, 1984. And then the next one wasn't until 1990, I think. And then it took a while until I got my clip going. But I found that even during the struggle, I was persistent. So I would say the next thing is persistent. Get up, start taking action, and keep taking action despite dark days, rainy days, cloudy days. Keep taking action. That is really the secret. And one more thing.
What was it about you, do you think, that was able to endure all that challenge and still keep taking action? Because a lot of people, when they feel they're struggling, you know, they kind of get paralyzed, they freeze, they pretend they don't have their dreams. What was it about you that those embers of fire were still burning through all those years?
Well, let's be clear. I didn't have that belief of that momentum every day. There were certainly dark days. I had a shotgun. At one point, I pulled it out and I was going to end it all. This was 1972, somewhere in there. And I had taken the shotgun out and shot it to be sure it worked. And then I loaded it because I was going to turn it on myself. There have been plenty of days where it's tough to get through them, really tough to get through them. I do remember that a key word I would use, and I used it that day, was curiosity. It's like, what if it changes tomorrow? What if it changes next week? That was 1972 or so. And I'm so grateful that I did take myself in, because I would have missed out on the most amazing, miraculous, incredible life with the ups and downs of a good life and the successes and none of it. I would have experienced none of it. And I think that's one of the ways that we get through it, is to remember other people have struggled too. One of the things that I've always done is read biographies of people who had it hard. And I could learn from their mistakes, but I could also kind of borrow their faith and thought, wait a minute, they came to this country and they had no money, they couldn't speak the language, they had no connections, and yet they built an empire? What? And that would say, Joe, if that was possible for them, maybe it's possible for you. And so I would say, some days you have to borrow your faith from somebody else to get through the day.
And who are your biggest heroes?
Oh, there's been a long list of them. Ever since I was a kid, I reached out to my heroes. When I wanted to be a professional boxer at one point, which is hard to believe at this point, but when I was a kid and I thought I wanted to be the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, I reached out to Jack Dempsey, who was one of the greats from the early days of the 1920s. He wrote back. I still have his picture. It's on the wall over there. He signed it to me. And when I wanted to be a great magician and I wanted to be Harry Houdini, Houdini was gone, but somebody who knew him, who was very famous at the time, was John Mulholland. I wrote John Mulholland, I think, in 1970, and he wrote back. I still have the 2 pages that he wrote to me. These people and a whole long line of other people that I either reached out to because I didn't know as a kid that, that was hard to do, or they wouldn't respond. I just wrote and they wrote back. I've done it throughout my life. I've done it when I was learning writing. I was doing it when I was learning marketing. I've done it when I was learning metaphysics. I mean, I can give you Neville. Neville Goddard was one of my heroes and still is. I have an entire collection of signed books by him.
Wow.
I had republished his very first book way before anybody knew who he was, just to bring it back into awareness. Neville definitely helped me with metaphysics. In the marketing world, I wrote a book on P.T. Barnum, which a lot of people think he said there's a sucker born every minute. He never said it. He never wrote it. He never acted like that. But he knew good publicity, and he just said, if that's what you think I said, I'll go ahead with it, because now you have my name on your lips. And I wrote a book about him and really feel like he's been one of my spiritual guides in marketing. We talked about Napoleon Hill. I have felt that Napoleon Hill has been on over my shoulder. In fact, there's a statue of him that I had made, the bust of him back there, because he is over my shoulder in that 3D reality, but also kind of the consciousness of him is around me. And then most recently, in the spiritual side, Yogananda, he wrote autobiography of a yogi. Oh my God, I got chills right now thinking about him and how he's influenced me. He died just before I was born, I think in 50 or 52. And his wisdom and his spiritual truths awakened me. So I can go on. That's a whole subject all by itself. Mentors, people who have inspired me, long list.
What did P.T. Barnum say on his deathbed that you found inspiring and influential?
Oh, you're good. I didn't know you knew that. Yes, I found P.T. Barnum profound on a lot of levels. He was a spiritual guy, for one thing. Some of his neighbors called him Reverend Barnum because they knew of his spiritual side. But he was a speaker, he was a writer, he was a politician, he was a publicist, he was a negotiator. He did so many things that were so amazing. 5 days before he died, he kind of revealed one of his business secrets where he said, I owe the wealth of my empire and everybody I've touched to the newspapers of the world. The newspapers of the world, we didn't have the internet back then, of course, they delivered his message. He would say, I have Jumbo the elephant. They would say, Barnum has Jumbo the elephant. And it would be distributed through the newspapers. So 5 days before he died, he's kind of revealing that one of the things he did was publicity. And when I advise people in the business world, I'd say, the thing you're probably not doing that would get you free advertising is publicity. And I learned that directly from Barnum.
Beautiful. What do you do before you go to bed at night to take advantage of that beautiful sleep time when the brain is so programmable?
Another great question. There's a couple things I do as a kind of nightly routine. And anybody who's followed me or heard me speak for a long time can probably guess. The very first thing is I get in the hot tub and I go through my gratitudes. It's my gratitude meditation. I'm in the hot tub. I'm usually alone, under the sky, sometimes with a cigar. And I'm just kind of giving thanks. Thanks for my life. Thanks for that day. Thanks for specifics that took place. It moves me into an energy of not just gratitude, but it's a high vibe energy where there's no negativity, no complaining. It's like, this has been good, and here's why it's been good. So that gives me a different kind of way to walk to nighttime sleep. When I go to bed at night, I have usually thought about what I want to do the next day. And I learned a long time ago to make two kinds of to-do lists. The first to-do list is what I'm actively going to do. Like at a certain time, I'm showing up for this interview. That's on my side of the to-do list. The other side of the to-do list is for the universe to do. I'll say there's some big goals I want to accomplish. I want my book to be a New York Times bestseller, or whatever might be the goal at the time. And I'll say, I'm not going to do it. You do it. And I put it on the universe's side of the equation, knowing that if it nudges me to do something, I'm obviously going to do it. And the to-do will go on my side. But I give it things to do. And one of them might even be to help me have a great night's sleep. So I wake up the next morning refreshed and rejuvenated and healed and clear and ready for my day. So I have two to-do lists that I'm going to bed with.
That's beautiful. And what do you do with that first hour of the day or the first 30 minutes when you wake up in the morning?
That's really my favorite part of the day. We have a French bulldog at this point. We've had her for 3 years. So the first part of the day is taking care of her. It's like, do you need water? Do you need fed? Do you need to go out? What do you need? Sometimes she's sleeping and I'm up by myself for that first hour or so. That is the time where, to be blunt, I talk to God. Or I talk to the divine, I talk to the cosmos, whatever it is, the politically acceptable phrase. I talk to the divine. I'll use that since Dr. Hulen taught me to use that more often than not. And I will make my requests. Very often there'll be statements of gratitude, but very often there'll be things that maybe I'm struggling with it. Maybe I don't know the answer to something. Maybe there's a perceived dilemma. And I'm just saying, you know what, I can use some help. And I'm going to do my Ho'oponopono, and I'll do all the other tools that come to mind or I've been trained to do. But I'm also enlisting help from the other side. I don't believe for a second I'm here alone. I don't think any of us are here alone. I do think most of us don't ask for help because we don't believe it's there. We don't believe we're going to get it. And so most of our guardian angels and everything are unemployed. because we haven't said, hey, I need your help on this particular thing. So I do a lot of talking to God in the quiet. Sometimes I get up very early. So sometimes before the sun's even up.
Beautiful. Having written over 90 books, 93 to be exact, what would be your advice? Because there's a lot of people out there who would love to write a book and don't know the first thing to do. What would be the first 1, 2, or 3 things that somebody should do if they want to actually get that book written?
I have helped so many people become authors, and I have been published in every way, shape, or form you can think of. I even turned my father into an author when he was 90 years old.
Oh, God bless you.
Never had a desire or inclination or any know-how about being an author, but he was a great storyteller. And I'll tell this story real quick because it'll probably answer part of what some people have on their mind. My father wasn't going to write anything. He was not a writer. He was not going to sit down and write. Didn't have a typewriter, computer, nothing. But he was a storyteller. I said, Dad, why don't you just record these stories on a cassette player, which I knew he would understand. Not DVDs, not a computer with a digital thingamajig. So I bought him a cassette player. I told him how to push the red and the black button on it. And that means you're recording. And I said, just talk as if you're talking to me. It's another one of the clues. Talk to one person. And you don't have to actually write. You can speak it. And so he spoke. And a few months after this, he sent me, I was in Texas. He was in Ohio. He sent me a box. And in the box were 9 90-minute cassettes.
We're dating ourselves here, Joe.
And the cassette player. And then I went, oh, what do I do now? And I thought, well, first get the cassettes transcribed. After they were transcribed, then I put them in a Word document. Once they were in a Word document, I fidgeted with them to see where did he repeat himself, where was there a flow. Then I gave it to an editor to improve on what I did, on the rough stuff he had done. And then I thought about a cover, and I had a favorite photo of him, and I thought, I'm going to make this the cover. Today, because of Amazon, anybody can be published, and anybody can be published pretty much the same day their book is done. I did that with my father. I uploaded the cover. I uploaded the book to Amazon's print-on-demand service. I printed one copy because I didn't know if he'd like it, and he'd have to approve it before I let it go live to the public. And on his 90th birthday, there's actually a YouTube video where you can see this. Around the kitchen table, I said, Dad, you remember those cassettes you sent me? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, and I didn't wrap the book. I just had it in a shopping bag. I pulled it out and I said, here's your autobiography. And it was maybe the first time in that 90 years that I ever saw him speechless.
Oh, my goodness.
And I saw his face get a little pink, and he was not a blusher. I saw his face get a little red. And then he said, oh, my God. And the rest of the family was around the table, and they couldn't believe it. I got chills now. And he stared at it. He stared at it. He could not believe that he became an author at the age of 90.
What a beautiful legacy.
This illustrates some of the ease of today. When I was coming up, it was extremely hard to be published. But today, you can pretty much do it easily. So if you're writing the book, be clear about what your concept is. Write it to one person. One person. Make up somebody. Martha in Montana. And write your book. Dear Martha, here's what I want to say. Because it'll give you focus and it'll give you what I call the intimacy factor. When people read it, and 5 million people end up reading it, they all read it one at a time. They'll feel like you just wrote to that person. So that's one of the things. Another thing is to be as simple as possible. A lot of us, we have the belief that we need to sound more intelligent when we're writing than what we are. And it's like, no, people read on a 6th grade level, if that. Be as concise, be as simple as possible. Another thing I would say is tell stories, which is one reason my father's book did so well. And in fact, it became popular. He did an autograph party with me. People would stop by the house to meet him because of his book. And a large part of it was he told stories, and people loved the stories that were in the book. Now, the book's called The Most Contented Man, if anybody was curious to look it up. And I asked him what the title would be, and he told me, The Most Contented Man. All right, that's the title for your book. So there's all kind of suggestions of when it comes to writing books. I love writing books. I love books. I'm Amazon's best customer.
Well, you must have a book out there to help people go along this path. What is your favorite book that you've published for this?
For writing and so forth?
For helping people write a book or get published.
You're good. One of my most popular books, and it was my very first ebook, and it's still in print as a paperback, is called Hypnotic Writing. Hypnotic writing has helped more people get past blocks, has helped them figure out how to easily write and to communicate with precision. I'm very proud of that book. It also demonstrates maybe the structure of the book, because all the chapters are only 1 or 2 pages. They're not really long, in-depth chapters like old books, vintage books might have been. Today, people, I think it was Mark Victor Hansen said, people want the Mick book. They want the Mick book. They want it to be short and sweet, bite-sized, easily digestible. So I would say hypnotic writing. And I co-authored a book with Jim Edwards, and it's called How to Write and Publish Your Own Ebook in 7 Days. I think that's the title of it. Those two come to mind.
Fantastic. So one last question. I want to be super respectful of your time, but if somebody's struggling, they feel really stuck, they're kind of depressed, they're kind of like you were when you were homeless and just didn't feel like you had a lot to rub together to create a better life, what would your advice to them be? What would be your 3 best practices for improving that?
Yeah, another great question. I love you and I love what you're doing. You're really pulling out the best and helping as many people as possible. So I feel that, I respect that and applaud that. I would say first is the mental reminder that this too will pass. The mental reminder. There are certainly dark days. I mean, I went through an ugly divorce during COVID, during the loss of my parents, during a family member attempting suicide, during a long list of things. There were certainly moments where you think the cheerful mindset guy who was in the secret has it handled. And there were moments where I did not. And I had to remind myself, the sun always rises. This too will pass. You just got to ride it out. And I would often say, one day at a time, it's all fine. Just get through today. One day at a time, it's all fine. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is focus on somebody else. There's a lot of people struggling and probably hurting far more than you are. When we do a little research, it is just, it's incredibly sad and incredibly incomprehensible to know of the sadness and struggles and stripes people are going through. And if you can help one of them or volunteer and help a few of them, you'll feel better. Absolutely. Right there. Plus the focus isn't on you, it's on somebody else. And the third thing I would do, and this is very important, and that is get support. Being in a mastermind, which was again Napoleon Hill's concept, can uplift you while you're uplifting others. And it's also a great way to achieve your goals. Like I was in bodybuilding contests decades ago, and it was a lot easier to go to the gym when other people I was with also went to the gym. You do it solo, you can certainly do it. It's harder. So have support.
Great advice. So the 3 books you wrote after Zero Limits were what? And we're going to put them in the show notes because this is outstanding. I recommend it to everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, Zero Limits was the first about Ho'oponopono. 10 years later, I wrote At Zero, and that took it down the road even more and answered a lot of the questions people were given, and also tells some pretty shocking stories. When Zero Limits came out, Dr. Hulen said, when that book comes out, and these are his words, the shit's going to hit the fan. And I kind of laughed it off, thinking, well, maybe he's just, nuts. I don't know. But he was right. And in At Zero, I talk specifically what that shit was.
What did he mean by that?
The world is not going to accept it the way I accept it. One of the biggest problems with Ho'oponopono is it's founded on total responsibility.
Oh.
None of us want to take total responsibility. We want to blame.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggies there. I mean, I had longtime friends turn against me. I had people that really were rebellious about the idea of, I'm not saying I'm sorry, I'm not saying please forgive me because I didn't do anything wrong. Completely missing the point of Ho'oponopono. So that second book, At Zero, dives into that and more that I think I think they're all good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have published them. And then the third book was a few years after that. It was called The Fifth Phrase. And the fifth phrase, I had a moment of a satori, if you will, and I downloaded the information that those 4 phrases are still valuable, but the fifth phrase could replace them all.
Do we get to know what that is, or do we need to?
I can tell you, but I wrote a whole book to say what the fifth phrase is, so it tells you that there's more layers to it than just saying it. The fifth phrase is basically, I forgives myself.
Wow.
And the reason it's awkward is it's not the I of your personality. It's the I of divinity.
Oh my God, that's mind-blowing. I love that.
Oh, well, thank you. The book, The Fifth Phrase, unpacks, because when I got it, it was confusing. It's like, I'm an author, I'm a word guy. I can't say I forgives myself until I understand it's not Joe I. And in fact, Dr. Hulen used to end emails to me by saying, peace of I. Well, the I isn't referring to him. It's referring to divinity. And so that's the fifth phrase. And the most recent book, which is really just a month or so old, is called Zero Limits Living. The 3 pillars of achieving all your goals. And in that book, I point out, at some point, Ho'oponopono ends up being a limitation too. And you have to go past it.
So true of this 3D
3D reality, right?
3D binary world that we live in. Well, thank you so much. This has been incredibly illuminating. I can't wait to read the fifth phrase, because I'm guessing that along with I forgives me, I also probably forgives everything. Yeah.
Yes. Forgiveness is one of those cornerstone get out of jail free cards that works for all of us, but we all have trouble with it, mostly with forgiving ourselves. But forgiveness is the ticket out.
100%.
And it's tied to the fifth phrase.
Can't wait. Dr. Joe, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have you here today.
I loved it. Great energy, great questions. You pulled a lot of great stuff out of me. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you're doing for everybody.
This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.